Welcome to the Zesty Ginger Podcast. We are Megan and Dr. Alex. We are here for transformation. Yours, ours, and the collective. Personal and professional for practitioners. But not just any transformation. Compassionate transformation. Because between the two of us, we have seemed to have done things the painful way. Let our pitfalls become your stepping stones. We aren't afraid to share our raw and vulnerable truths in order to help you transform your thinking, your body, your heart, and your soul. Combining 15 years of functional medicine with brain-based habit change to lead you to the best life possible in a compassionate way. Compassion, yes, yet plan to roll up your sleeves. Transformation requires your participation. And a quick reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor, not this doctor, before making changes. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, Dr. Alex here with you. I am very excited about today's podcast episode because we're going to be talking about blending supplements. And that's a different way to say that is to say, who can tolerate supplement blends well, and who generally is going to tolerate individual ingredients well. And I'm doing this in honor of our amazing sponsors, Organifi, and that's spelled Organifi. They are doing a super special coupon code just for you all, just for this podcast, and that code is in the show notes with the link. Check it out. And they have a bunch of amazing blends that I've been using, and we've been fans of Organifi for years now. And you heard the interview with May, the CEO, on the podcast last week, and you heard then how much integrity and how much diligence, research, and intentionality goes behind the scenes in that company. And that is exactly the reason that, as people who are incredibly picky about sponsors and people we work with, and there's a reason that we have not had a lot on the podcast here, is because they have to be very aligned. And so when we do find that, it is a big deal to us. And that is because our belief is that the more that we all find each other, those of us who are creating intentionally are in an alignment with one another, that together we can more powerfully impact the world. So of course, our goal is to gather as many people and to unify a whole community of folks thinking the same way, moving intentionally out in the world to make it a more peaceful, happy, joyful, loving place that we all want. And so with the blends that I want to talk about today, Organifi does have a couple different ones that I've been using. For one, I've been doing the Harmony blend for my own hormone balance. And I also really love the green juice blend for that. And then also the pure. So that's personally what I've been doing, and I am loving them. I have previously been a solo ingredient gal and have had the pleasure, the blessing to move over to being a blend gal. Now there's more people are going to be able to do just fine with the blends and with the solo, but of course there are people that do better with solo ingredients just because of what's going on for them. So I wanted to talk through. Now, none of this stuff is set in stone. I just want to say up front, these are general considerations, things to think about, but you individually, as with everything, need to go to your provider and figure out what works best for you for your individual case and all of that good stuff, right? These are overall arching considerations, but these cannot be seen as recommendations or anything like that because they're really not like that. That's not how that works. So I cannot say a definitive list, right? These are just things to consider as part of the bigger picture. So when, like I said, more people will fall into the category of being a a good fit for the blends option when it comes to supplements like the Organifi blends. And then there's a much smaller proportion of people that do better with the solo. And so I'm going to start with the blends and kind of and hop over to solo as I get to those points. That's essentially what we'll go through today. For the blends and for what's relevant around here for our community, anyone who is working on healing and addressing all of who they are will generally be available to take blends. They will do better with blends, and here's why. It is an uphill battle to get to full safety from just throwing supplements into the physical body and just doing things with the physical body and leaving all the emotional space, all the mindset stuff as is, just leave it running whatever it was. And usually what happens is that while people are working very hard to eat the right food, take the right supplements, then they're at odds with that signal. Are they in fight or flight, or are they in rest and digest, heal, and learn mode, right? The people who are working on all of themselves, as in they take the supplements and they eat the food, also having considered and worked through their emotional landscape, dealing with their emotions, understanding their beliefs, working through limiting beliefs, beginning to hardwire more empowering beliefs, those people get to living in parasympathetic and being in that heal and learn state way faster, and they have to do a whole lot less, which is obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that this is what we talk about, and that's how that pans out. That means that then their systems are much less reactive and are much less problematic when dealing with blends. And that is where people actually get to do a lot less and get to utilize things that have more oomph, kind of more bang for their buck, because their system is available for that kind of work. Now, again, I'm not, for each individual person, where that is and how that goes, there's details there. But that right there, I would say, is the major determinant of the freedom that someone feels and the amount of choices for food they have, the amount of supplements that they have available to them, the stuff they can do, how does alcohol impact them, how does lack of sleep impact them, how do loud noises impact them. All of that is one part and parcel of the same thing. So that is why impacting that gets to not only blends and just ease like that, because it's so much easier to get a blend than to individually hodgepodge everything together. Absolutely can be done, no problem with it, but I mean, I'd be lying if it isn't easier to just get the blend. So when someone, just to recap, once someone is taking all of them into account, they're more likely to get into that parasympathetic state internally, more consistent, and hardwire it faster and get over to blends. Okay, now with let's go over to the solo. Anyone who has had significant, severe complexities in their health journey and has had negative outcomes, generally the sense of fear and being scared of bad reactions, or even if you haven't had a bad reaction, just being worried that you will have a bad reaction, is a good indication that that fight or flight system is fairly active and that things are being perceived as a threat. And so in that case, A, that's where the solo supplements make sense. B, there of course is then the invitation to say, if that's happening, where scared is an emotion and I will have a bad reaction, or I did have a bad reaction as a thought, right? And so to my point on working on the emotions and the mindset, you can either say, yeah, this is where I am, I have to stick to these limited options, or I can just start working on it and move myself into the other category. So again, not set in stone, and completely what you do, what you decide determines on which side you fall out and what you get to do moving forward. Like I said, I was on the side of the solo supplements. Over time, I've gotten to move over to blends, and I love it. Okay, and that certainly took into account not only the scaredness, but usually, and we cannot make this as a general statement, but oftentimes is the people who have had negative reactions also have had more complexity in their medical conditions, like the number of medical conditions that they have, and or the number of supplements and medications that they've needed throughout that time. So sometimes it's like you've thrown surgeries into the mix and different specialists, and at that point there's just enough going on that it necessitates that each individual ingredient or supplement, medication, whatever you're adding, be considered within the complexity of the landscape already present, right? To throw in a blend to something that's already incredibly complex is trickier. I will say with that caveat though here is that a lot of times what happens is people just go from provider to provider and they carry over supplements and medications, so they just keep gathering them and they don't always get taken off. And so sometimes the laundry list is of things going on is actually an invitation to say, has someone considered all of these together recently? Has someone looked through what's the availability? Do you really need all these? Are they still indicated? What do you got going on that's historic? Right, and really just pare it down, because sometimes the complexity does not need to be there, but if it's there, it has to be taken into account. And then once you start unpackaging it and start reversing it, then you don't have to be in that category anymore. All right, for blends, one major consideration is the stability of you internally and externally. So one consideration is, are things rapidly changing inside your body? Often when things have been feeling a similar way for a while, it's because the things that we think, feel, do, experience maintain that thing, and so there's not a new story being told. Usually in that case, from the stability internally, there's more wiggle room for things like blends. The other factor of that is external stability and how much are things changing. So because the brain will determine how you utilize those supplements, when life is really chaotic, even though the internal symptoms and the experience could be stable, if the external's really unstable, then it helps decrease factors by sticking to solo ingredients, right? Then you know, well, like for example, let's say I moved recently across the country. So when I'm moving, sure, my health was stable the way it was, but my external circumstances were changing a lot. And so I did not want to invite in extra question marks, right? So if I'm using blends at that time and something happens, good or bad, I don't know which one it is. And for a changing landscape, that could be more relevant. When things are stable and all of the variables are kind of what they have been, it's a lot easier than to pare things down and tell what's coming from what's good, what's bad, what do I want to keep doing, what do I want to take away, right? And so that stability, internal and external, if it's present, there is more availability. And again, I'm not predicting each individual person. I cannot say that enough. These are overarching things that we can say collectively, but each individual person needs to consider. And then if there is a lot of instability, if things are changing, if things are switching, then I often find that it's easier to stick to the solo ingredients and to keep it moving in a clear way. Okay? And then the last part I will say about the blends is that even if there's complexity, even if there's a changing landscape, the thing that can still make blends work in that regard is that if you've gone through the experience of vetting all of the ingredients already individually throughout your experiences, and one of the reasons I love the Organifi blends, like the Harmony, I'm like, those are the things that they put in there I use, and I have used for years. And I love that it aligns like that, and that's how I know we align with that company, right? Our reasoning, our thinking, their research, it all goes in a similar vein. And so I love that they've done the heavy lifting for me, and they put it all into these delicious things that I just get to mix and drink, right? And so because I individually vetted each of those, then even if I had some of those other factors, I would have felt a lot better about approaching it that way. So in that regard, that can be an additional layer of things to consider, that even when things have been wonky and things are going on, you can still make it work. All of this stuff needs to be worked on within the provider circle and the support system that you have. Many of us have care teams. I'm always for care teams. I feel really strongly that a group of providers is incredibly helpful and empowering. And so because of that, these considerations are to fuel conversations, right, and discoveries, and to dig deeper into what you have going on with more insight, with more clarity, and making sure you have filled out. For example, if you don't have parts of your care team that are working on the emotions and the mindset, it's available. Like you're listening to one right now, right? That's our Health Transformation Accelerator, our in-person retreats or certifications all include that because of the power that they hold. So whether you work with clients or you are looking for yourself, if you don't have that component, make sure that you're considering where in your care team is that coming from, because you don't want to make life harder for you than it needs to be, right? And I hope that that's an obvious statement, but sometimes we lose sight of the different options that we have and just don't know that we're sort of recreating a thing that we don't need to have. But it's there, and all of this stuff is so powerful that you start blending it together. It opens up worlds and opportunities and potentials to utilize resources that weren't there before. And that level of empowerment can't be duplicated. You can't kind of like fool yourself into having those experiences, but they are also so powerful for hardwiring, because once you show your own brain that you can liberate something that wasn't available to you before, that power that you feel that is stored in your brain and the memory centers, that can't be shaken anymore, right? Somebody can come say something to you and it can knock you off kilter, but you can always return back to those experiences, and that's why they're so important. So we need to give ourselves the gift of putting ourselves in environments where we can experience those things to reclaim and free ourselves from things that have been keeping us stuck. And boy, is that fun and gratifying and way cooler than like worrying about supplements and what you're eating every moment of the day and all that kind of stuff. So check out Organifi. It's the link and the coupon code is going to be active this month. So make sure you hop onto it and take advantage. Check those things out. And of course, I would love to hear what you think of it, what your experience was, and we'll check you soon. Have a good day.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.